Mhm.
And I'm going to go to live streaming.
All right.
Got it. Boom, waka waka.
Are we getting, we are being live streamed as we speak. Let me go to your
hoping
page.
it's going there. I'm in the remote areas of Maryland. And so I got to hope the internet connection's working well enough to make this happen. And I believe it is. Randy, go take a peek and let me know if you see us out there, buddy.
I see you are live now, so I'm going to hit share. So that's a good thing.
Hitting share. I'm going to go ahead and get the show started because Juan, we have 6,000 people in the audience right now. Hey, everybody, you're on Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy. For those who don't know, I'm the Teddy, and the other guy in the red shirt's Randy, and the other gentleman is our special guest, and we'll let Randy introduce him here in a minute. Thanks a lot for joining us on our next to the last show for the year 2021. And I can promise you in 2022, this show will continue and will be even greater than it has in the last, year and a half, almost
2 years, really. Yeah. We started back in April of 2020, right after COVID hit.
Yeah.
And we thought, hey, let's just do a show and talking about job hunting. And so Juan, I don't know if I shared this with you. We had talked earlier about our show, but so it was just on a whim. We said, yeah, sure, let's try it. So we did it one time, and it was just the two of us, and it went okay. But I mean, let's face it, we're legends in our own mind, but nobody else cares. Who wants to hear two guys, babble forever, right? So we started bringing in
Don and Greg and Lisa showed up.
All right. So three in the entire universe showed up. But then we started to think, hey, we want to add some value here. So we started to bring guests in to talk about not just job hunting, but professional development and just a whole host of related topics in how to do a better job while you're employed and also if you're in a job search. And so today's no exception. Before we introduce our guest, Teddy, tell us who you are, and then I'll introduce myself, and we'll introduce Juan. We'll get her started.
Yeah. So those who don't know me, I'm the company's Burriss Consulting. We're LinkedIn strategists, trainers, and coaches teaching LinkedIn and Sales Navigator. In 2022, Burriss Consulting is creating an entirely new division that will be a sister company to LinkedIn training and coaching, and it's going to be using Google Workspace and Gmail as business tools. We're really excited about that. Got a huge number of people who are eager to consume the videos, the articles, the stories that we're producing to help people master both LinkedIn and Google Workspace's business. But you know what? Right now, it's all about you. Randy, would you introduce yourself to the audience, buddy?
I'm happy to. And just as a reminder, if you're watching us, put in the chat box where it is you're watching from, and also what's on the lunch menu. And normally, Teddy, I say, Teddy, you're buying, but Juan's buying today because he got a promotion, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. So yeah, he's going to be making some bank, and we need to be nice to him. So, hey, Randy Wooden with Goodwill Industries of Northwest North Carolina, with the Professional Center. I started it actually. That was their first mistake. They hired me to start the program back in 2012. It's the first professional center that we know of in the nation for any Goodwill, and to this day, still the only one we think. So anyway, we're happy to help you if you're a job hunter or you're a professional and you're in this kind of, first of the year, I think I'm going to get it started. Well, reach out to me. We work by appointment. Happy to help. I work with all different, ages, industries, functions, that kind of a thing, but it's all good. And we're free. So I tell folks, you get what you pay for. Yeah. Let's move on quickly, please. Juan Abreu joins us today. Juan, you've helped us in the past at the Professional Center with some of our group events with mock interviews and such. And so you can run, but you can't hide. I tracked you down and said, man, we need you on this show because you bring some value to job hunters. You are with Spectrum, and you're an in-house recruiter. So I'll turn it to you, Juan. Tell us a little bit more about you and what you do there, and also about your promotion.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for the opportunity. Definitely a blessing for me to join you guys and, just kind of chit chat about, what's going on now in the world of recruiting. I've been with Spectrum. It's almost 8 years. Cool thing, I've been at the same center, had an opportunity to grow here from a representative to a supervisor to, just kind of work with the training team for a few years. And now as a recruiter over 2.5 years. So I would say it's been great for me. I was born and raised up north and came down to North Carolina and learned about hush puppies and sweet tea and Chick-fil-A and all that good stuff. So I think I'm a North Carolinian now.
Where'd you move down? Where'd you come from?
So Jersey, New Jersey, and
Really?
a lot of family in Washington Heights, New York, as I'm a Dominican and, just obviously fluent in both Spanish and English, but definitely, blessed to bring some culture, down here as well.
So you have three.
You mentioned the promotion. Go ahead.
Three languages, Juan. And then we'll talk about your promotion. So you can speak, your native tongue. You can speak New Jersey. 4 or 5 languages. You speak English very, very well, and now you speak North Carolinian.
Yeah, I do. Now I'm not going to give it a try. My youngest was born here in North Carolina, and she's much better at that language. She's got a little twang, a little swang, and
I was born in Jersey. So I grew up in Rhode Island, up north, up there, where they talk like this all the time. When I'm talking to you. Yeah, good deal. So Juan, now you've got a promotion. So what is it you had been doing most recently? And then let's talk promotion. And then we're going to dive into our topic today, which is all about recruiting. You ever wonder why you don't hear back from recruiters? You ever wonder, how does a recruiter work? How do they manage the flow of people? How do they do all this stuff? And more important, what can I do and should I do so that I am on their radar and somebody that they actually, consider for a position? So we're going to dive into that. If you have questions for Juan, stick them in a chat box. That's where Teddy's going to monitor stuff. But yeah, so you're in for a new pay bump and some new responsibilities. Very cool, man. Tell us more about that. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. And really brief. I mean, it's a huge opportunity for me because I've got my master's in cybersecurity, and I'm currently recruiting more for the customer ops side, and it's really just for the center that I'm in. The new gig, the opportunity I'm walking into here in 2022 is going to be more in a corporate executive recruiting opportunity where I get to recruit across the board. I also get to implement my master's in cybersecurity, as I will be recruiting for some more technical jobs as well. So definitely a great opportunity there.
Good deal. So let's jump in. First off, I always ask the why question. We hopefully work in a job that we're passionate about, or certainly in a field, in the industry, in a role that we're passionate about. And I think you're no exception. I can just tell it in your voice. You really dig what you do. What was it that drove you or motivated you? What's the why for you as far as why you do what you do?
Good question. For me, it's being able to plug folks, not only in positions that make sense for them, but also, giving them a new career, giving them a future, the ability to, bring food on the table for their families. It's always that positive feeling of offering, the position of someone that maybe, I don't know, have been applying for the position for a long time, or, just lost their previous job, or have been trying to get into this field. It just always feels good to reward, someone with an opportunity that, they've been working hard to get.
Yeah, and that in the job search can be, I'll be gentle here, frustrating for people. And part of the frustration is you guys, recruiters, and it needn't be an us versus them, but some of the mindset becomes, how do I get through the gate here? How do I get noticed? So we're going to dive into that. Please, if you have questions for Juan, put them in the chat. Let's first just start with a day in the life. I sound like John Lennon and Paul McCartney, but let's talk about a day in the life of a what I'll call a high volume. So you're recruiting a number of openings.
Yeah.
You're an in-house recruiter. And that means, first, let's define what in-house means, so people are squared away on that.
Yeah, so the in-house compared to maybe a staffing agency, a recruiter, big difference. And, I'm not going to speak on behalf of all staffing agencies, but just based on conversations with other recruiters is, as I mentioned before, I've been here for a while, so I've built relationships, and really any question that a candidate can bring to me, I'm able to, for the most part, get a response for them rather quickly or on the spot because of those relationships. And the biggest thing as well is the business acumen, right? So I understand, what the business is looking for. I've gone through the hurdles. I, just understand how the business functions, so I can really bring the full story to that candidate, versus sometimes in staffing agencies where they're given a certain amount of roles that they have to fill, but they don't always know kind of the ins and outs of the business that they're filling the roles for.
Yeah, I know
So it's
that.
kind of the big
Yeah.
difference there.
And that can be a challenge when you try to be all things to all people from a staffing company perspective. And that's not just talking about different companies, right, and different industries that are clients, but also the different roles that you're recruiting, whether it's hourly folks, whether it's professionals and such. So in your case, then all of the positions that you're recruiting on are for Spectrum, right?
Correct.
So that's what it means to be an in-house.
Yep.
And so let's talk day in the life. What is a day in the life, a typical day for you? And what are some things that, maybe if you want to dispel a myth or two, that kind of thing. Well, what are some things what's it look like for you when you hit the ground running?
Gosh, right now I could say, so we got to fill probably about 80 positions in the next 3 months or 2.5 months, about 80 positions. So when you say high volume, it's definitely high volume. So for me, I'm coming in, I've got a bunch of, requisitions I have to look at, a bunch of names and candidates, and just kind of sorting those out. Also talking, scheduled phone screens, and then moving them into interview role. And then the ones that interview and get the offer, processing those, the ones that don't get the offer, sharing that, bad news. But a day in the life, I mean, it's a consistent flow. In which we call candidate flow. So getting candidates in and out, discussing with, the leadership team, the management team, the team on site, to find out what their expectations are, communicating what the updates are, on the upcoming classes, working with training. So it's a lot of movement on a day-to-day basis, and just making sure, that we're on top of the, ahead of the game, making sure we get these numbers in. So sorting through candidates is really the main focus every day.
Yeah, I know Lisa's got a question. Teddy, when you're ready, if you're ready now, you want to throw that one out there?
Go ahead, Lisa, thanks. So Lisa's question just popped up and said, how do you get, and by the way, this is not from Teddy, the LinkedIn strategist, trainer, and coach. This is from Lisa. How do you get your HR folks and your, the people within your organization, how do you get them to use LinkedIn for sharing the message, not just through the company page, but through their personal profiles? How do you get that kind of engagement with your HR team?
Yeah. So I can answer that.
Please.
Yeah, I can tell you what we've done, which was pretty neat. So I definitely understand where there's potential disconnect or frustration there, because we also had to go through what we did as kind of a recruiter / LinkedIn training. It was very basic, and we made sure that the top leaders were, for it, they were involved. And then we scheduled every supervisor, every manager, every HR representative, and made sure that everyone went through kind of that introduction. And then we kind of put a plug in there in that presentation to make sure, hey guys, before you jump into the presentation, go ahead and create your LinkedIn, just in case you have any questions. So again, we encouraged not only the creation of their accounts, but also to understand why we're pushing that as a source for us, and making sure everybody's on the same page. We're all recruiters, essentially. So if you can share this information, if you can promote, and also we added a detail on there for their careers, right? So we're like, you might not be a supervisor for the next, 10 years. So why don't you update your profile based on your career as well, which a lot of people haven't been doing. So to answer your question, making sure top leadership's involved, and just kind of presenting that opportunity to them and showing them how to do it as well.
Yeah.
Got a lot of questions already. Yeah, look at that.
I'll get to those in a minute. I want to also add to what Juan said. Spectrum has a company page on LinkedIn with almost 205,000 followers. and also 71,560 employees. And by the way, I'm connected to 28 of these people. Randy, check that out. 28 different Spectrum people I'm connected to. And one more tip about their Spectrum page. They have 2,713 job openings listed through LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So that's a whole lot of real estate and a whole lot of opportunities.
Yeah, it is. And so we have a lot of questions that are out there. So I guess one thing is COVID, and that's going to impact Christmas gatherings, and it's impacted how we do business and how you recruit as well. And let's talk a little bit about how COVID's changed the game and the playing field a little bit in the last couple of years for you.
It has. Now, I would say the good and the bad. So the good, we continue to recruit. We continue to fill positions. We didn't have work from home. We still don't, unfortunately. So that's one of our kind of opportunities, I would say, as a recruiter, to kind of encourage folks that we're following the protocols and we're abiding by, the guidelines for that given state, that given county and city. But it's definitely changed the mindset for a lot of the candidates, because they're looking for, work from home opportunities, as some are still fearful to be in the workforce, in the workplace, because of COVID. So the other thing is, people unfortunately are still getting COVID. So some of the challenges have been someone will apply, they'll get the offer, they get the opportunity. And then as the class gets closer, unfortunately, they'll get COVID. So then we got to work with them, to try to get them positioned correctly. And some of that with interviews too. We've had to, reschedule interviews. And at the beginning, last year, we were doing a lot of video interviews. Now we've transitioned over to face-to-face as well as video interviews. So some folks are more comfortable face-to-face versus interview, and vice versa.
Yeah, that's good that you have that hybrid mix, especially if somebody's far enough away where it would make sense maybe to do the video piece of that. Some folks are asking about Zoom. Yeah, Teddy?
Yeah, I'll get the next one. Chan wants to know,
right,
and I can answer this. Chan wants to know, what's your applicant tracking system? And I did that research, and you're using a tool called Talent Brew from a company called Regency. And you may not even know that, Juan, because it's all back in the back side. But I'm assuming you're using AI through applicant tracking systems to take, and Chan's asked this question, to take the thousands of resumes and applications you get and drive it down to something meaningful. Is that right?
Yes and no. So we're using Indeed as well. I guess putting in that plug in there. So what Indeed does, as we post the requisition based on the preferred and required expectations there, it'll pull based on their resumes. Won't touch into that. I know that's one of our topics, but it does pull specific, but every applicant that applies, regardless of the sourcing tool, it'll put it into our bucket. And then, for the Zoom and the MS Teams, the name that we see up front versus the one that you mentioned, Teddy, is Modern Hire. So Modern Hire is one that kind of plugs into the requisition, and then the requisition sends the link. So they don't have to download anything, which is pretty neat. You don't have to download anything, just click on the link and jump in the video.
Something you mentioned, this gets on, I don't have a soapbox here.
I thought you were standing on it.
You want me to get you one, Randy?
I put it in the budget for next year. Order two, one for you, one for me. All right. So you touched on something that it struck a chord with me. And earlier I said you want to dispel a myth or two or whatever. And so let me throw it out here. You can address it, but I think you've kind of touched on it. And it's AI. And for years, years, we have heard. I'm not sure who we is, but we've heard that evil software is screening my applicant pool, and only those who pass the smell test, whether it's the number of keywords, whether it's whatever, only those make it to a set of eyeballs like yours. And the rest of them are cast aside. It's evil software, and we got to beat the system. All right. The companies I've talked to, and you guys are big league. I mean, you're a huge company here, right? And you even said every application gets looked at. Now they may not look very long, but that is a myth. The technology allows for that, but it's very expensive. But yet you guys still have the personal touch, right?
We do.
Yeah. And that's so cool. But most people don't. Most people don't get it. They don't. They just think it's all software, and it's not. It's still people.
Right.
Still people. All right, I'm off my soapbox. I'm done.
Human people, right, Juan?
Yes, we are human.
Real humans.
Absolutely. We run the test of, the bots and, click on the box that shows the light in the car. And we passed that test. But I will say that the way it's scrubbed, I'll give you an example. So in Indeed, if you create a profile, you put your resume, it'll scrub if Spectrum, as an example, could be any company. If we're looking for, let's say, technical, opportunities or technical experience and so on, Indeed will scrub for us, and then it'll send us folks. But those they didn't necessarily apply. So those folks just have their resume on Indeed, and it'll, screen them and send us, hey, you might want to touch base with these folks and so on. But if you apply for the position, it will come our way regardless, and we will go through those in our candidate flow.
Very important. And because that happens, meaning that you have to pass judgment. All right. It gets to you. That brings in the whole networking piece. And when somebody, you're sitting on 2,000 job openings on LinkedIn alone.
More than that. Yeah.
More than that. You guys got to be drowning over there, you would think. So how important for you and your team is networking, and somebody who can say, Teddy Burriss applied for your whatever position. We want to take a second look at this guy. How does that really move the needle forward in his favor?
Drastically. So we do have an internal referral program that we utilize quite often. So existing employees could say, hey, my cousin, my brother, my friend, is going to apply for this role. Can you take a look at it? So that's definitely a plus. But networking is huge to give us a heads up. You don't have to necessarily work for the business to refer someone, right? So if you do send, which in some cases as a recruiter, if we posted the position, sometimes LinkedIn will give you that option to message that recruiter that posted the position. And that's key. That's such a great opportunity for you to send that recruiter a direct message. That doesn't happen often. And we have so many roles. And trust me, it's my best friend when someone reaches out to me and says, hey, I've got a good individual for you. It makes my job so much more easier to be able to recruit quick when I have someone that's been referred to me.
Oh, absolutely. Ted, you and I preach that all the time. It's not, if you just sit at home and pound out applications and wait for the phone to ring, it might ring, but there's so much more you can do proactively to get noticed. And that, I will tell you, Juan, and by the way, is Juan Abreu with Spectrum. He's an in-house high volume recruiter, soon to be more on the corporate side and the executive side. So kudos to you on the promotion. But understanding what goes on that other side of the desk when you click submit, and trying to pull back the curtain a little bit and see, what's kind of stuff Juan has to go through here as he, goes through that whole onboarding and recruiting process. So if you've got questions, Teddy, I don't know if there are any other questions that are sitting there. You got one?
The one from Kilby in a few minutes.
Oh, okay. So there's plenty we can talk about. So let's take a look at resume pitfalls. We talk for an hour on this. So, but what are a few things you just kind of look at it and go, that's a train wreck. What are some pitfalls that people step into?
The first thing is the basic, right? So avoid, misspellings, grammatical errors. But I would say one thing that I do notice that people just kind of let it go sometimes is the gap in your work experience. So it's okay to put a little blurb on there. So if you have a couple months of, of a gap of work experience, maybe you have 2 years, don't leave it up to the recruiter to figure that out. Because some recruiters they're not going to take the time to figure that out. They're just going to use that as a red flag and they're going to move on. So be careful with that, and make sure you're applying for jobs that, at least are relevant to what you have on your resume. Because what I see a lot is folks applying for, representative jobs or customer service positions when they've never worked customer service, or, they have a completely irrelevant experience. So make sure that your experience is as relevant as possible, which some folks create multiple resumes with their experience, and they highlight in some resumes, their experience that's tailored to that position they're applying for. So cover letters, I know that might be considered old school, maybe some black and white, but it is still a reference as a star when you apply. So when you put in your cover letter, that looks good every single time. And you'll see that the higher level positions require cover letters versus entry level positions. So I would encourage some cover letters as well.
Yeah.
Depending on, I use it. Teddy, what you want to?
So
You got one? Okay.
Kilby, I'm not going to ignore you. I'm going to get to that because it's in a part of the conversation we have coming up. Lisa wants to know, if you work for Spectrum today, should you let your boss know you applied for a job in a different department?
So it's always encouraged. I know some businesses require that you tell your supervisor. Here it's not so much required, but encouraged.
Yeah, same here.
And there should be a conversation really with your leader before you even applied, because that shouldn't be a surprise that you're looking elsewhere. So yes, I would say always tell your leader that you've done that. Now there's scenarios in which the environment might not be welcoming to that conversation, but in most cases, yes.
Hey, Randy, you and I need to talk after the show.
we can talk after you talk to Randy.
Get back to you, Randy.
Just rumors. They're just rumors. I swear, Teddy, they're only rumors. So just go with it. All right. So here's a term: square peg, round hole, round peg, round hole. So if I want to go down, let's say I work for Goodwill. And I run our professional center. So let's say there was a competitor with Goodwill and they had a professional center. And I basically just wanted to go down, down the street and switch business cards, do the same job, essentially same industry, just for another company. That's what I call a round peg and a round hole. On paper, I'm a great fit. So in that case, my thought is a chronological resume probably could get it done, because you always want to move high up on the resume the stuff that matters to the reader. Now, if you're making an industry change or a functional change, trying to do something different, you're more of what I'd call a square peg trying to fit in a round hole. And, if Teddy, you don't want me building a house for you, let me just say that. But even I know that a square peg does not go in a round hole.
I got a hammer in the office, Randy.
And so I encourage our clients at the professional center to consider a skills resume, where you're highlighting the 3 or 4 main skills or requirements that the job is asking for, and showing examples of that instead of burying that throughout the body of your chronological resume. To your point, forcing them to try to sift through and figure out what's the story with this guy. Your thoughts on the differences in preferences when you see a resume, and then also to add to that, the application, because that is by nature a chronological, not a skills thing. So what do you think about those 2 types of resumes?
So it's always interesting because with requisitions that are posted for specific positions, there are some minimal requirements. So if you meet the minimum requirements, then you have an opportunity to maybe even be looked at or maybe interviewed and considered. So those 2 different situations, I could tell you, I fit into those two in the last 6 months. So I got my master's in cybersecurity last year, just really quick as an example. To get into cybersecurity, into that world, has been an extreme challenge. But what I did the last 6 months was I started networking and started plugging in and talking to people in the industry to try to understand what I'm doing wrong, or am I just not applying for the right positions? And what I found out is that cybersecurity is a tree, and there's several branches that come out of that tree. So I have to figure out what branch I want to be, hanging into and applying for. And now it started to make sense. I'm like, oh, you know what? I wasn't applying for the job that I really wanted. I was just applying because it said cybersecurity. So to plug into, maybe a new career, an opportunity, I would say start asking questions and understanding what that market is like and what they're looking for and what you need. Sometimes you need a certification to kind of get that door open. Sometimes you just need, to update your resume and make it look a little, more flashy based on what they're looking for. But you do that by networking. So just, those are my situations that I've experienced, but I would say you can get in on either or.
Yeah, cool.
Teddy, you take care of business here, Teddy, and then I'm going to follow up with Juan on that one.
We can't pay the bills unless we take care of business, Randy. And so, hey, you're on Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy. I'm the Teddy and Randy's in the red. And our special guest today is Juan Abreu of Spectrum. Juan's bringing us a conversation about high-level recruiting, high active recruiting, and how he does it. Some of the tips and the secrets that we don't tell everybody, but you get to discover them today. Randy and I have been doing the show since April of 2020. And we're moving into 2022 with a new sponsor and looking for new sponsors to help us grow your show and be able to afford the high level special guests like Juan. I'm just joking about paying you, so that we can really keep this show growing for you. So thanks for joining us today. And we have lots more to come and lots more to come in 2022. Randy, back to you.
Yeah. And again, if you have questions or comments for Juan, please put them in the chat box. We'll try to work those in. So I'm going to continue on this path here a little bit with the different types of resumes. Chronological resume. When you look at a resume, first off, do you look at a resume before you look at the application? Let me ask you that first.
No, we look at the application first.
Okay.
Yep.
Is that a standard thing throughout most companies, or is that just more unique to you and or Spectrum in your view?
I think it's standard across the board. I think the challenges there are going to fall within what the sourcing tool is. As I mentioned earlier, like Indeed, some folks are going to be scrubbed out even before they apply. So those businesses are going to look at the resume first because they never actually applied. So they might encourage those folks with the resumes that are more relevant to apply. So at that point, they're looking at the resume versus the application first.
Okay. I know, and I don't do a lot of hiring within Goodwill. Thankfully, we don't have a lot of turnover in our department.
Good.
So the volume that I'm dealing with is a lot smaller, and that may have something to do with it too. But I like to look at the resume first, and forget about cover letters for a moment. I'm just talking resume versus application. But here's why. A lot of times on an application, it forces you into a chronological depiction, and you got to be truthful, right? And so if you've had a few Band-Aid jobs that really aren't career oriented, if you know what I mean, you put them on there. And if that's what the recruiter looks at, they're going to go, I'm not seeing it with this dude. Whereas a resume is putting your best foot forward. It is representing yourself because it's a marketing piece to begin with. That's what the resume is. It's to hook the reader to say, pick up the phone and call me. Right. So you like the New Jersey coming out there a little bit?
Yeah.
You get me on a roll here. But with a resume, you can, without lying, and you don't want to do that, but you can put your best foot forward. So if I look at a resume and I'm going to go, ugh, I'm not even going to mess with the application. If they haven't hooked me quickly on a resume, I'm going to move on. Yeah. But you're saying they look a lot of times at the application. I just wonder if you might be missing, you know what I'm saying? If you're not looking at the resume, I guess that's what I'm kind of getting at.
Yeah, no, I definitely get that. So what happens with us specifically is that some of these roles that we have require assessments. So it's going to determine whether they pass the assessment or not. And that's why sometimes looking at the application first versus the resume. Also, sometimes on the application, they'll disposition, certain questions a certain way. So we have to look at that as well. So that's the only reason. There's some checks and balances that need to happen before we look at the resume. But I definitely get what you're saying. I can see how sometimes we might overlook someone initially, but we'll come back to them.
Yeah. And I know within Goodwill, at least in years past, when we have hired in my department, we have, a lot of companies have what they call knockout questions. Are you legally eligible to work in the U.S.? Are you age 18 or above? I mean, those are really yes or no. If it's no, you're out. I mean, but we also have scoring questions where there may, have you ever worked in customer service? Have you ever done this? Have you ever been in sales? And it's just like a test. You're graded on that. And that is a way to sort of weed out some of the applicants. It's not based on the number of keywords that match the job. It's not, but it's based on how they're answering. Is that what you're talking about with this? Is that a kind of like a scoring scenario?
Yeah, pretty similar.
Pretty similar. Yeah. So keep in mind, when you got to be truthful, I hate to have to say this.
Yeah.
But you got to be truthful when you're filling out an application, because you know what? You might get through and get the job, but then if you're found out later, and I'm sure you have examples of that where they're like, come into my office, so we need to talk.
Yeah.
You little whatever you, yeah. And that'll happen. So be truthful. And you know what, if the job's not for you and you've networked your tail off and you've done everything you can, it's probably just better off that you're not there. It really is. We've had a lot of other turf to cover, plenty of things we can talk about. One of the things you mentioned in the talking points was seek a career path.
Yeah.
Talk about it. What do you mean by that? Career path?
Yeah. So in conversation with a lot of our candidates, some of the folks are, you ask them, well, why'd you apply for this job? Right. They can't answer the question. They really struggle with that. So I would like to encourage folks that are seeking, a job to not only seek for a job, seek for a career path. Like as for me, I'm always, looking for an opportunity that has a ladder to it, meaning, okay, you're going to be a representative one today, but if you push yourself and you develop and you get an opportunity, you might be a lead, within a year. You might be a supervisor within 2 years. You might be in another position. So this way, you're not stranded, right? You become a professional at what you do. You become a subject matter expert, but you have nowhere else to go. So always, always, always look for opportunities within businesses, or even just within that role that gives you a chance to advance in your career. It doesn't always have to mean you have to change your course. And, I was in nursing and now I'm in technology. I was in technology and now I'm doing something else. You don't have to change your entire career. Just look for a role that gives you a chance to grow within that opportunity.
And I think networking comes in, the old term informational interviewing. And some people don't like to use that, but I use the term look before you leap. And I've got stories of people that leapt before they looked and it didn't end well. So take the time, and LinkedIn's a great tool to use. You can go source people who do the kind of, like you talked about with the cybersecurity, and peel them back a little bit and figure out, okay, what do I need to do differently? What's life like on your side of the desk? That leads me to another quick point, though, too. One is for people that, let's face it, you can't even open up LinkedIn without a gazillion jobs for talent acquisition falling into your lap. Companies are dying to hire people, and they'll, if you have any experience in talent acquisition, you probably get a job. What's any advice you might give to somebody who's thinking about this as a line of work, maybe as a way to transition?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So here's an interesting thing that I noticed in the last 6 months, and just to touch really quick, I got frustrated looking for an opportunity in cybersecurity, and that's why I transitioned to, I'm just going to connect, I'm going to network, I'm going to ask questions, I'm going to try to dig deeper in, and I grew, from 100 plus to, over 600 plus connections I obviously don't talk to everybody that I'm connected with, but I've had a quick chat with those folks, and it's helped, to build that opportunity, but the chances of someone getting into talent acquisition or technology. So those are the key words. So a lot of companies are putting talent acquisition and technology or technical onto their roles because they know that that's what people are looking for. So my suggestion for folks trying to get into one of those fields or specific to talent acquisition, try to dig deep into what that company does. Because sometimes it's not what you actually think it is. And it's important to also realize, what are they paying, right? So a lot of these roles are actually either contract roles, or they're paying a small base salary, and then you really get paid off commission. So you got to almost build yourself up within a year or two to actually make some good money. But if you don't ask that in the forefront, you're not going to know.
Yeah.
And then finding out, is it a staffing or is it just an internal in-house, a recruiter or a talent acquisition role?
Have you done any recruiting out, external recruiting to be able to kind of firsthand know the different mindset, if there is one, between in-house and staffing?
I have not done like a staffing agency recruiter. Now, in my previous roles, I've worked for Bank of America as I was a leader there, and we did a lot of contract hiring. So I worked with the staffing agency really close, where we had to hire, 30 folks in the next 2 weeks. And then we had to chop it down to 10, and we had to kind of keep going back and forth. So in conversations with them, but not, firsthand.
Denny, you got something? Yeah.
I was gonna say, and I've been on the other side in external recruiting as a working for a staffing firm, and it is a different mindset. I will tell you. I mean, first of all, I can remember back in those days. This is back in 2005 through 2010 that I did this work, and I'd often focus on the jobs that paid me the most amount of money.
Yeah,
that's what I'd focus on. And then I'd get to the other ones later on, and as an in-house recruiter, I'd wager that you don't have that kind of metric. You just got to work all the ones that come across your desk.
Yep.
So it can be a different mindset, and it's what's the word? It's a dog eat dog world, no matter which side of the desk you're on, in-house recruiting or contract staffing. So it's a whole lot of work. So,
all right, so let's pivot here for a moment. How do I find a good recruiter? First of all, how do you define a good recruiter?
Well, I'm right here. I'm right here. You got him, right?
Why did I think he would say that? I have no idea.
So go ahead, Randy. I'm sorry.
No, man, that's what I was getting at is, I get questions about, well, do I have to pay a recruiter? The answer is no. But then it's okay. Well, there are a million of them out there. How do I sift through that and find the ones that I need to be working with, or the good ones? And good could mean moral and ethical, effective. It could be whatever, but maybe I should use the word appropriate for me in my career at my level in my company. How do I go about that whole maze of recruiters out there and figure out the ones I need to be talking to?
Yeah, I would say, first and foremost, try to find the recruiter within the field that you're trying to plug in. Because, good is relevant on perspective. So a good might be good for you because you're trying to get into technology, and we got connected, and I'm a recruiter for technical gigs, right? So that's one thing. Try to plug in with recruiters that fit your market, what you're trying to get into. But also, as you're communicating and trying to get involved or build a relationship with recruiters, they don't respond back to you, in a timely manner. That's probably not the best recruiter, right? You want a recruiter because, as my experience has been, I need to stay in touch. If someone reaches out to me, I have to stay in touch with them and make sure that I communicate in a timely manner, because I don't want to lose, that candidate. So communication is important. And then the recruiter you speak to, if they care about, you and plugging you into the right role versus just plugging you into a role because it benefits them because they're filling it. That's also something that's important. You want someone that's going to care about how you're going to be successful in that role versus, we have an open role and I need to fill it, and I'm going to fill it with you. So that's a big difference for me as well.
You can fog a mirror, and therefore when can you start?
That's right.
I got a ton of stories. Juan, I know you and I talked the other day, and that's how I made my transition from working in radio, was to become an executive recruiter.
Nice.
And, it was a bumpy ride at times, but it's led me to what I do now. One thing that you didn't mention about finding the right recruiter or the appropriate one is to talk to your colleagues and see who they've been approached by, where they've had a good experience. So it's the same thing if Teddy is going to hire a landscaper for his palatial estate. He's not going to, read through the yellow pages. Well, maybe Teddy might. He'll leaf through the yellow pages and interview 25 or he'll open his Rolodex that he's got there somewhere. And he's not going to do that. He's going to say, hey, Randy, your palatial estate looks fabulous. Who have you used?
Who's your dude?
Yeah. But word of mouth that's where I'm going. Word of mouth, just like you as a recruiter, Juan, you value word of mouth. When somebody can tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, check out this bald guy. He's sitting in your stack here. You're going to pull me out of the stack. And especially if it's your boss or your director or somebody who's, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's job one for you is self-preservation. So you're going to pull me out of the stack immediately. And again, so much of this goes back to that word of mouth, but it works both ways. So I can be led to Juan Abreu because Teddy had a great experience with you when he made a job change. Do you find that is well, I guess true, but is there anything you'd like to add to that? Other ways that you can go about trying to identify? You talk about the right industry. How do you do that? How do you find the right recruiter industry person?
Yeah, it's a good question. It doesn't happen, it doesn't happen on the first knock. You have to keep knocking on those doors. I could tell you one thing in the last 6 months that I've seen tremendously are folks on LinkedIn posting, I just got accepted to so-and-so company. I just started a new role. I just got promoted. It's all over the place, right?
It is. Yeah, it is.
So what you need to do is reach out to that person and say, first of all, congratulations. But get me plugged in with whoever helped you get that position, right? Especially if they're within that market that you're trying to target. But one thing you showed me, Randy, and I'll give you credit for that, is, you can use, absolutely. I'll pat myself for kudos.
Ambidextrous.
Is using LinkedIn to source, right? For yourself. You type in some keywords just like you do on Google, and it'll pull up, some folks in whatever industry you're looking for that are in the city that you're looking in. And you could just continue to drill down until you get some folks. And once you hit, connect, you can put a little message in there and say, hey, I'm trying to get into this industry. Would you mind connecting with me? Would greatly appreciate it, right? So making those connections, trying to drill down as much as you can, and you have to keep knocking on the doors. There's going to be a door that'll open for you.
Yep. All right. So you've kind of touched on this. We still have a couple, 3-4 minutes, then I'll ask you to summarize.
Yeah.
But one of the big bugaboos is I get ghosted. All right. I send my application. I don't hear anything back. These guys, or worse, I interviewed with the guy and now they won't return my call. So, a lot of problem, but help allay their concerns about, okay, why am I not hearing back from a recruiter? What are some of the main reasons why I may not hear back from you?
Yeah, so I apologize in advance, and I apologize for all previous experiences with ghosting with all these candidates. I would say there's two big highlights. One is some of what we spoke about before. You're applying for jobs that are not relevant to your experience. And most recruiters will just kind of look over and keep going, right? They're not going to message you. They're not going to reach out and say, hey, this job doesn't apply to your experience. They're not going to say anything. They're just going to go and move on. The other thing is you have to make sure you're not applying for positions that have been out there for more than 3 weeks. Sometimes a business will post a requisition out here in these sourcing sites and they won't pull it down, or they won't click on that box that says, stop this requisition after a certain amount of time. So if you're applying for positions that have been out there for more than 3 weeks, you might as well not think that they're going to reach out to you in most cases, right? So you want to apply for requisitions that are most recent, right? Within a day or two, within a week or so, so that you have more relevance when they're looking at that requisition. Because again, if it's been out there for more than 3 weeks, most likely they're not doing anything. And, with that, I would piggyback something that Randy and I were talking about, that he made a great point. Go to the direct website of that company, right? So if you're applying, let's just say for Spectrum, and you see the Spectrum position in Indeed, go directly to our website, right? thejobs.spectrum.com, and make sure that that requisition is still up there, right? So don't apply just through one source. Instead, go directly to the website, because sometimes you'll be sitting in a requisition forever and no one will reach out to you.
Yeah, it can be frustrating. You mentioned, just real quickly, requisition expectations. Is there anything, we got like a minute or so for this, anything you want to hit on requisition expectations?
Yes, absolutely. So one big thing that I wanted to touch on with requisition expectations is the fact that some requisitions are hiring for multiple jobs and some requisitions are just hiring for one. Or just two, right? So you have to be wary, right? If it's a leadership role and it's not in a call center, most likely it's just one position. So if you don't do your networking, if you're not reaching out to anybody, it's really difficult to even be considered or looked at unless you have tremendous experience. And even at that point, it makes it difficult. But when you're applying for roles, let's just say like a customer service representative role in a call center, most of those requisitions are seeking multiple jobs, right? Multiple roles to fill. So you have a better chance to get one of those interviews versus one that just has one role, unless you've made some connections.
And just for clarity, I think everybody knows this. I'll make sure we're clear about it. A requisition is basically a job description, open job description posting.
Yes, thank you.
So,
Thanks, Teddy. Appreciate that. We hit on the talking points that you have. I know that you're a big advocate of really seeking out that work-life balance and fulfillment. So I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you if you'd like to elaborate a little bit on that and what you mean by that.
Yeah, work-life balance. More than ever is such a big deal. Don't sell your soul for any role, any position. Definitely not worth it. Definitely dig deep into trying your best to fit a role into your lifestyle versus your lifestyle into a role. Because at the end of the day, what matters is you, and what matters is your lifestyle, your family, everything that you want to accomplish in life. And you might not be in that role for a long time, right? Because you should be pushing and setting short-term goals and long-term goals. So essentially, if you can get a role that fits into your lifestyle, that's essential. And that's really what I've been pushing in the last couple of years, just to kind of get myself well balanced with life.
Yeah, Teddy?
Especially when you have young kids in your family that need your attention, et cetera, et cetera. And hey, Lisa asked this question, and I'll let you answer it, Juan, is why do companies use executive search firms that's external to the company? Why do they do that?
So what I see it most now is for the technical roles. And they do it because they have a quarterly target. So they'll say, okay, we need to fill X amount of roles by the end of this date. So it benefits more to get someone from the outside and pay them a little bit more commission or pay them based on hire or whatever the case may be, versus actually bringing somebody in, which we have to give insurance to, and we have to give the benefits to, right? So you're going to average probably like $20,000 just to get somebody on board, which is a full-time, versus a contract job where you're just going to tell them, hey, here's the target, hit the target, and here's what we're going to pay you. And it's going to be a lot less expense for the business than it is for, bringing a whole group of, folks in as full-time.
And I was lucky when Randy and I were putting this show together and Randy wanted to hire somebody. He didn't have to use an executive firm to find me. He just went down Main Street in Winston-Salem and saw me. So
picked up the phone and said, anyway, all good. Hey, Juan Abreu. Juan, thank you very much. We're going to ask you to kind of summarize here a little bit. It's the world has changed. I mean, when COVID hit, it was a bloodbath. You couldn't find a job. There were no jobs to be held. The economy came to a screeching halt. And I was talking to a lot of talent acquisition people who said, I'm dying on the vine here. We can't find job openings or requisitions to work on. and they were looking at getting into other lines of work, and now it's reversed.
Yeah.
So what are some takeaways you'd like people to have about the line of work that you're in?
Yeah, it's extremely beneficial. It is to an extent, job security for the next, I would say 12 to 18 months, to an extent. The opportunities as a recruiter to, bring your value to a business or be able to connect with multiple folks or increase your network are extremely high. For candidates, I would say what I mentioned before, you have to keep knocking, you have to build your network, you have to get connected, you have to do your research. We're finding that some folks just think it's easy, right? Hey, I'm going to apply for, 100 jobs and I'm sure one of them is going to call me back. Randy, you touched on that. You have to invest in yourself. And I would summarize this by saying that there's an opportunity for everyone out there. You just have to find it.
Yeah, you put it a lot nicer than I do. I always say there's a butt for every seat, and in life in general. But again, follow your passion, follow things that you ideally feel like you're skilled in and qualified for. And life's a journey, so it may be that you're not there yet.
Yep.
Good example with cybersecurity. That may be your next career because you've done the homework to position yourself educationally and also with your network. So Juan, hang around for a few minutes. Teddy, do you have a story, anything you'd like to share about?
I do. And by the way, before I tell my story, Juan, answer Don's question about how do you deal with somebody you hired and goes, oh my God, I shouldn't have taken this job. I want to go back to my old job. How do you handle that?
Well, that's that happens more often than you think. Mm-hmm. As much as you explained the gig and you provided all the details and they were excited, it's not always green to some folks when they come in. So transitioning over to the training team and getting them to encourage, the individual. I mean, essentially, we want to keep the person because that's who we hired. Yeah. But no, I mean, someone that has, applicant remorse, it's kind of tough, right? Because we're in a market where we have to move on. I know it's kind of cold to say, but I have a job,
Yeah, absolutely.
You need one. Here it is.
It's there for you. And the same thing too, on the flip side of that is accepting a counteroffer. And if I'm a recruiter and I've got a candidate who is wishy-washy and thinking about taking a counteroffer, I need to squash that.
Yeah.
And that, as a recruiter, I mean, taking a counteroffer might feel, it's like eating sugar. Yeah. You might catch that buzz for a little bit and then you crash and you're like, man, don't take a counteroffer. Can we all agree on that? Is that,
can we agree?
Don't eat sugar either, Teddy.
Can't stop that.
Candy canes are in short supply. So
here's my story.
I'll
make it short, Randy, so we can do this right. So my story is this: when I was in December of 2010, when I was thinking about building my business, I read a book that I wish I would have read years ago that I recommend everybody read. That book is titled Designing Your Life. It's written by two dudes, Bill Burnett, and I'm trying to remember the other guy's name. I can't remember his name. Bill Burnett and Dave Evans, Designing Your Life. And the title of the book actually goes on further and saying, before somebody else designs it for you. So really worth reading. Again, I read it when I was 49 years old. I wish I would have read it years ago. But it really can have an impact on you and your career and your life if you're focused on designing it. So, Randy, what's your story?
I'll give a quick story and throw it back to you, Teddy, to tell us about our guest next week and to take us on home. But I mentioned I'd gotten out of radio, got into recruiting. And one of the things, I don't like getting lied to, and I've shared this before. And as a recruiter, you get lied to by candidates. If you're a headhunter, you get lied to by clients that tell you we need to hire a guy yesterday, and now they don't return your call. And I could go on forever. But what I really enjoyed and what I've been able to carve out as a career is, as a recruiter, I liked to ask good questions of both the company and the candidate so that they go in with their eyes open. And my ex-boss used to say, try to break the deal, try to break it, because if you can't, you've got a good fit. So ask good questions, go in with your eyes open, do your homework, and hopefully, you're going to be in a good spot. And that's what I love about what I do, is I get to help, in this case, the candidates really do a good job of asking questions and being honest and truthful with themselves. So Teddy, what you got, buddy?
All right. So, hey, Juan, again, buddy, thanks for showing up. Really appreciate it.
Yep.
Great ideas and conversations. Everybody, this is, December 22nd. Our last show of 2021 is next Wednesday. And our special guest is Markel Morris. Markel owns a company called Futures in Motion.
Yep.
She's going to bring us a conversation about, how to overcome your biggest challenges, how to overcome fear, how to help you change your mindset so that you are more confident in your journey, whatever that is, how to bounce back, how to move forward. And we thought this would be a great end of the year conversation. Markel Morris, again, joining Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy on 12/29 at 11:55 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So join us for the last show of the year. And we hope everybody has an absolutely fantastic Christmas, and we'll see you next week.
Absolutely. Thank you, Juan. Take care, guys. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.